Yeah, I believe in you. I don't believe in lucky sevens. I'm not sure about my nest, but I know I believe in angels. I believe in happiness.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to see you this This is not Saturday. This Thursday morning. I'm used to doing the long shows, the long days on Saturdays, so please forgive me. But it is the last filming day of the year. We are closing out 2022, heading into 2023, hoping for something different in 2023 in many different ways and good things and all of that. Well, everybody, I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor. I have a little goodie bag down here, so pardon me just a moment. Honey Stinger. I love this product. I've already had my Honey Stinger caffeinated gummy energy chews right here. They're great for the gym. They really help me out. As everybody knows, I am hypoglycemic and I love the gym. So that means that I can work out, and then all of a sudden my sugar crashes and I need a little rescue. So I'm going to grab my Honey Stinger products. I love, like I said, the energy chews. Sweeten the burn. Trusted by professionals, collegiates, and everyday athletes alike. Honey Stinger makes delicious products for every stage of your athletic journey. So 6 chews are 100 calories because they use natural honey. As we all know, there's a good bit of natural sugar, and your body loves the natural sugars. They know how to use that quick energy rather than artificial sweeteners or just, the white granulated sugar that kind of puts on some pounds now, doesn't it? And we all want to lose a little bit now that Christmas is over and Hanukkah is finishing and Thanksgiving and all the Halloween candy. We put on a little. So everybody goes and runs to the gym, right? Pack it in your bag, love it, you're gonna love it. Available at many different stores. I believe they're available at Walmart and CVS. They're definitely available at honeystinger.com. That's HONEYSTINGER.com and Amazon. You can get everything on Amazon. You don't have to leave your house because God knows after 2020, we don't really want to talk to each other. But we do have to get out there and do that a little bit more. Smile, say thank you. Let gentlemen be gentlemen, right? And so with those massively conservative views that they would have called in 2020, and thankfully we're calming down, I have a wonderful author connected with us this morning. George Hilway is a celebrated author of a new book recently released called A Day in the Right, a humorous collection of his comedy writing, satire, blogs, and social media posts. George is the former host of The George Hilway Show on KCLA-FM 99.3 Los Angeles. In his book, he goes off the cuff and shoots conservatively from the hip with his compilation. I typed in complexion, Lord Elizabeth, compilation of social media postings that span more than 10 years of duration. And without any further ado, Mr. George Hilway, how are you this morning?
I am great, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. These are always my most favorite times on this earth, is to be able to meet somebody new. Let's chat and get to know each other. And I picked up your book. I love your book because there's so many things in here that are thought-provoking as well as hilarious. So tell me a little bit about your background before we get into you as the author.
Sure. Well, I did a stand-up comedy for a number of years in Los Angeles. And like you mentioned, also hosted a radio show out there on 99.3 FM for a while. The show kind of started out as a Beatles breakfast and then kind of morphed into the George Hilway Show, where I would tackle the news of the day, the current events, sports, the world of entertainment, you name it. Always firing my fully, revolver and gun in any direction that I would choose in a comedic or humorous sense. Did that. Writing was, always a passion of mine. As they say, a writer writes always.
Mm-hmm.
And so, being involved sort of in quote unquote, if you will, the showbiz side of things, I was doing stand up, had the radio show, had the writings. And this was kind of a little bit predating social media and the advent first of MySpace. I guess I'm dating myself with that one, and then later became Facebook. And so, basically, that was a little bit of how I got into writing and wanting to do the funny, if you will. And I think it might have been 2008 or 2009 when I got on Facebook. And Facebook has actually been great. I know a lot of people think of social media as the devil reincarnate, but I tell you, it's been fabulous for me as a place to keep, instead of the old days, having your journal, where are my writings? Where am I going to put this? It's all in one centralized spot, personal stuff, pictures, trips, basically your daily diary is in there. And so, Facebook is great because when you write something on there, whether it's, your social media update, blog, parody, note, what have you in there, obviously you're going to be have a date associated with that. So as I was advancing, through the years, it kind of occurred to me, I said, maybe you should write a book at some point. You've got all this great stuff, that you've put out there, I think already. How could all these likes from your fraternity brothers and septuagenarian aunts be wrong, right? I was thinking to myself, geez, a book, that's like 250 pages. And that's a lot of research, and that's a lot of fact checking and whatnot. I said, maybe I've got a book that's already been written and I don't even know it. So the latter part of 2020, early part of 2021, I said, what if I was to go back and sort of review everything on my Facebook page? And at that point, it was going back about 11 years. And I said, let me go in chronological order, which Facebook will let you do, thanks to the date, and just kind of compile sort of the best of George Hilway in that time. Topics that I've shot at over the years: politics, current events, making fun of politicians, my team, the New York Yankees, anything in sports, Hollywood, the Oscars, you name it. Really, no topic or person or organization was really off limits. So I just began to compile sort of the best of, and that took me from maybe having over 500 pages to kind of just narrowing it down, editing it out. The editor that I worked with was fantastic on this in terms of really being spot on, I think, and getting my point of view, understanding the message that I was looking to put out there, and keeping that consistent throughout the book, and weeding out some of the things that did not build or aspire to my vision. So you might think, well, George, you already had the book written. You were writing these as you went, right? How long could this have taken? I got to tell you, the editing process was several months on this because, obviously just to go through and look at what you've written and taking the stuff out and the stuff you had written that was going to stay in, we need to maybe polish it up in a few areas, and all that went into making this baby right here available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Get your copy today. And that was that. But I'll tell you what, Elizabeth, it was a joy to edit this almost as much as it was a joy to initially write some of these blogs, parodies, as I went along. So I feel truly blessed that this year was the year that this guy came out.
So, as you just shared with us about being a stand-up comedian and then collecting all your postings over the years, the mood has changed so much, especially after going through this whole cancellation theory. Let's just call it a theory. And it seems to be slowing down, washing out. Especially when one side isn't being so targeted because everybody's realizing, you could cancel from both sides. So a lot of comedians just sort of sat down and they didn't know what to say, if they could say anything. You continued. Where did you find your gumption, your what's the right word, to just say, I don't care, like, you can't cancel me, and just keep going?
Because I'm a big believer in the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Quite simply. And you're right. We've lived through, I think, the darkest days of cancel culture. And I think they are behind us. And your point is spot on. I think it was either Seinfeld or Chris Rock were the first two prominent comedians to stand up and say, we're no longer going to play college campuses because the PC aspect is too crazy. And which is weird, because if you ever looked at Jerry Seinfeld's comedy and you're like, wow, that guy is too politically incorrect for me. I mean, that's kind of how crazy things have gotten, where, to the point where Seinfeld stood up and he's like, listen, on behalf of, my fellow comedians, if you guys think that I'm too politically incorrect, what are you going to think about, my buddy Chris Rock or others out there? And Chris Rock followed suit, and Chappelle, who's been unfairly targeted by Netflix and others. And so, being a big believer in the First Amendment, and by the way, Elizabeth, the only reason we have the First Amendment is so that you can protect the speech that you disagree with. That's the whole reason. So we don't live in this echo chamber where only one side gets to say what they want. And I think the biggest mistake the right made in this country for so long was not engaging in cancel culture, because it gave the left such an unfair advantage that they could play a game where the rules were slanted in their favor so much. And I know guys on the right, like Hannity, might say, well, we're better than that. We don't want to engage in that. We don't want to do what they're doing. And well, then you'll keep having what's going on in perpetuity. I think Einstein once famously said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And to your point, when the right got involved in the cancel culture game and those on the left didn't like it, it's like, oh, we can be targeted too. We don't like that. And now they see what those on the right have gone through. So to wrap that ball up, I think we're hopefully extricating ourselves from that. And we feel the need as a country to protect the First Amendment. I was never obviously in favor of it, even those, canceling on the left, but we had to play that game to get an even level playing field in order to extricate the crazy cancel culture notion out of our society once and for all. And where it's kind of slowly diminishing and receding, hopefully to an acceptable point for everyone.
So I have a question about the editing process of this book. When Robin Williams, which I adored, I had him on my list of I really would love in some capacity, even as an extra if I had to, just to be on set with him, just to see his moves and does he ever shut it off, And so when he passed away, my first thought was, oh, I'm going to recite one of his best jokes. So I got into the car. I drove down the road to where there was a construction site. I said, hey, are your parents retarded? Because you're sure special, And I turned to the camera and I'm like, what? He hung it up. So that got reactions of, Too soon, Elizabeth, too soon. Um, in the editing process, was there something in there that you really wanted to keep, but it was suggested to take it out?
There might have been a couple along the way. Or the one I could probably think of was the Derek Jeter parody of when he retired. Basically, the idea was that he had a press conference although he was retiring from baseball, he was in no way retiring from his bedroom activities. And perhaps that might have gotten truncated a bit by my editor. Just consider some things. But apart from that, I think the stuff that I wanted out there was, for the most part, left in the book. A lot of that revision and editing of going from 500 pages ultimately to 247, I think were things that really just didn't add to the overall spirit and humor of the book. Not everything in the book is humorous. It's probably 80-90%, but these are such crazy times that we live in that if I had something to say on a certain day about what was happening or an issue and in no way evoked laughter or humor, but I felt it was important enough to leave in there, I would for certain it stayed in the book.
Okay. So let's take a look into the book. There's a couple of things that I have earmarked because I really love them. So especially in 2020, I mean, I am just rolling over some of them that are in here. But so let's go over October 6th, 2018. And if everybody can take a look here, the book goes literally by your postings. So it's going to say the date and then what the posting is, which makes it such a creative read. You know, it really breaks it up from somebody who loves novels or, you know, whatever type of book you might be reading. I've never seen anything quite like this, where it's just a catalog of all your social media posts, which is really creative. So October 6, 2018, why is there replay in MLB? They still get to half the calls wrong. So
yeah, I think I was watching a playoff game and it just kind of came to me and I'm like, you know, we're basically at the same right-wrong percentage we were pre, replay in baseball. So, you know, things like that stand out. You put them in there real quick.
February 10th, 2019. Chuck Norris is allowed to make the first movie on Bumble.
the first move on, and just along with those Chuck Norris jokes, right? That's totally suited to him. A guy like him being allowed that power on the dating app.
Right. February 7th, 2020. I gotta say, this is in particular my favorite. Washington Post and CNN to fact check Trump's claim that Pelosi is an old, mashed up, drunken sack of shit. I think that checked out. I don't usually get political on this show, but I think that checked out.
You could almost, at that time, Trump couldn't, blow his nose or say good morning without CNN or someone getting ultra wise and wanting to fact check him. So you could almost see something like that happening because the left and CNN and, the quote unquote mainstream media just was so overzealous in everything that that man said at the time. But Pelosi, it'd be fun to comment on Paul Pelosi these days, but we'll leave that for another episode, Elizabeth.
March 5th, 2020. This speaks to me in just the exhaustion of what we were in. Pocahontas is packing up the teepee.
Are you referring to Liz Warren dropping out of the 2020 presidential race?
Yes.
Yes. I guess her and her 0.48% Native American Indian decided that it was too much and she didn't want to be an Indian giver at that point to others in the race and had to pack the TP up and go smoke a peace pipe with others in her land of Massachusetts.
What is your favorite? What are some of your favorites here? These are so
You know,
cool.
if you go to the back of the book, I wanted to give people an idea of first, you know, to what you just said, Elizabeth, how the date is there, the topic I was referencing in parentheses, because you're obviously not going to remember, you know, in 12 years what was happening in that time period.
Right.
Early on, I thought this was spot on. June 25th, 2009, and I was commenting on Michael Jackson's death. I wrote, NAMBLA's flags are at half staff.
Mhm.
And you know, and so I didn't really get any letters or emails from the North American Man Boy Love Association, as it was. And at the time, I think Jackson still had some defenders in his camp that perhaps he wasn't a child molester.
Mm.
But we all saw the HBO documentary several years ago, which I think put any doubts of that to bed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, the Jussie Smollett thing, we all remember that early 2019 in Chicago. You know, yet another incident of black on myself crime. You know, of course, because you know, in Chicago, there's a lot of MAGA supporters in downtown Chicago who just love to beat up people coming out of the subway at 2 a.m.
Right.
But I also had the pandemic, because the book goes through 2020 towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always found those COVID daily pressers that Trump would do with Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx to be particularly funny, especially when Dr. Birx would come on. And I guess April 7th, 2020, she recommends, and I quote, if you don't have a mask, wear a scarf. Well, we can't do that either, Dr. Birx, because you own all of them. You know, she always had that haughty kind of chiffon scarf on, regardless of the temperature. She always reminded me of the upper crust society lady in the Three Stooges who realizes too late she shouldn't have hired them to cater her party with the 100 banana cream pies. But she had that sort of a haughty look about her. And I do take her on a little bit in certain pages for the year 2020.
I love it. I really do. And, you know, we were talking in the green room for a second, and you mentioned Johnny Carson's quote of why piss off 50% of your audience. So for anybody listening to this, they might think, oh, this is a MAGA Republican. This is, you know, I don't want to, this is a ever Trumper. What would you describe? I know you do classify yourself as a conservative, but just because you say conservative doesn't mean that you're far right, correct?
Correct. And it also doesn't mean that I don't take on quote unquote fellow Republicans in the book. Lindsey Graham is a favorite target of mine. Chris Christie is a target of mine because they make targets of themselves. More literally for Chris Christie than Graham. But so yeah, to think I just go after the left in this book is a fallacy. Go after the right where I deem it's appropriate. But also, too, please keep in mind that with the book, this is not just a compilation of news and current events, although that is some of it. I'm taking on sports, taking on, especially baseball, my favorite, the New York Yankees. I'm taking on Hollywood. For a couple of years in here, I would do kind of a live updates of the Oscars and all the hilarity that ensued, especially in 2017. When they brought out those two relics, Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, to present the Best Picture. And we all know what slapstick comedy that turned into. So I'm taking on the world of showbiz, entertainment, and just kind of life in general. You know, there's probably maybe some dating stuff in here as a single guy, and just things about my life which I found humorous, which I've included. Nothing too overly personal or intrusive, of course, but what I was thinking that day, what I was feeling, if I thought it was good enough, it got in there. And so, you know, please keep that in mind, because as I've gone around, I've done my book signings the past year at various Barnes and Nobles, and they've been tremendous, by the way, for having me in. I've had a lot of liberals buy this book.
Mhm.
And because as they're reading it, they're like, a couple of them describe themselves as, George, we're open-minded liberals. We'd love to be able to come in and see your take on it, as well as you really opening up yourself to going after different things besides, left-wing politicians or liberals. So in that respect, I really think it's a book for everyone who needs a laugh or is looking for a laugh. And we've had a couple of crazy years here, as we all know. So I think that's why it's doing well with both sides of the political spectrum.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate your opinion on that. And I would agree. It is very entertaining. I think no matter what your political views, I would double down on that. It is extremely entertaining. It's quite interesting how you look at the span of time here. So 2009 to 2020, there was a big part of that went through the Me Too movement. There are a lot of interesting points of view as far as the Me Too movement goes, especially in Hollywood. It's, in my opinion, it's kind of similar to the whole cancel culture. It's like there are some people that were involved and they need help. They need to be able to recuperate and go through therapy or whatever they need. But then there were so many that just sort of like jumped on board and they weren't a part of it at all. It just became like this fashionable thing of #MeToo. Did you write many things about that in this book?
The Me Too thing, I believe, was started by Alyssa Milano. And although I don't agree with a lot of what she says, obviously her involvement in this from the genesis seemed very sincere, and it led to others coming out in Hollywood too. So it was kind of such a serious topic. I probably only gotten there in the way of critiquing Hollywood's hypocrisy up to the point of Me Too. And I think there's something in there about the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings where he was being, I think, unfairly castigated on a daily basis with some very baseless claims, and the left was all over him. And so I said, in a way, poking fun at the hypocrisy of the left, I said, just tell the libs in the mainstream media that Kavanaugh directed Rosemary's Baby.
I saw that one. I saw that one.
And I just thought for so many years, if Hollywood could give a pass to, Roman Polanski, and I get it, all that he's been through with Sharon Tate and the Manson murders and the aftermath of that, and having to go your life, losing your baby and your beautiful life. I guess that was 1969. But how does that provide an excuse or comfort for what he did and why he had to ultimately flee the country for drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl in the late 70s? And then you have an Oscar show, I think it was in 2003, when he won for The Piano, and it was, hey, let's bring him back, let's get him in. Enough time has passed, and I don't think there's a statute of limitations on time passing for brutally raping anyone, no matter what the law might say. And we also had hints of it about the Hollywood hypocrisy as it related to Me Too pre-2017. I think it was Seth MacFarlane one year hosting the Oscars, who was about to present an award for Best Actress. And he said, ladies, in 5 minutes, one of you will no longer have to pretend that you find Harvey Weinstein attractive.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like, wow, everyone knew about it for years. But it took Seth with that audience to really bring it about, which, leads you to believe pre-Me Too, all the stuff that's coming out now about Bill Cosby, about Hugh Hefner, about Wilt Chamberlain, about Jim Brown, Harvey Weinstein, others. The list goes on and on and on. The point is, it was known about in Hollywood. It was tolerated. It was part of the quote unquote culture of the casting couch, and nothing was said about it. It was almost as if, okay, it's understood. You're a young starlet. You get off the bus from somewhere in Iowa. You want to be in this movie? Well, you know what you have to do to get it. And that's disgusting that this went on for decades. So I think when Me Too finally came out, my target was more of the hypocrisy that preceded it, as opposed to anything really post going forward.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. And I mean, it's a very sound answer. I agree with you. You know, there are so many things that seem very hypocritical. And you mentioned Cosby. So they announced, I don't know if it was the first announcement this morning on the news, maybe it came out yesterday, but Cosby is to be released from jail. I believe it's within the next 6 months, year, or something like that. And he's planning his tour dates. What are your immediate thoughts on that, of Bill Cosby, who has been convicted for so many rapes and molestation and drugging women, and it was just a known thing? You know, he was, what was it, NBC? He was just like the king walking through those hallways and stuff, and everybody loved him. He gave that appearance of being wholesome. You know, he was the pudding pot guy. He was a comedian. And now he wants to go on tour.
Yeah, I think it's disgusting. I think anyone that watched the great documentary from earlier this year by W. Kamai Bell, it's called "We Need to Talk About Cosby." If anyone had any shred of respect for what Cosby did in his life, and I get it, he's a comedy pioneer, legend, really broke the color barrier in a lot of ways in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. But when those stories come out, and the documentary does an amazing job of telling this, it's stomach turning. Yeah. It really is. So I don't know who's going to be buying tickets to see Bill Cosby. And if they are, I certainly wouldn't have a glass of wine with them after the show.
No.
You know, his whole MO, his whole thing was drugging, and that was it. And these girls come out now, and he was at the aforementioned Playboy Mansion doing all kinds of stuff in the 60s and 70s. And I think what's disgusting is that in the 80s, with NBC and his hit show, The Cosby Show, he was America's dad.
Yeah.
You know, like that. And as the show points out, and this didn't really dawn on me watching it, certainly not as a young kid in the 80s, but what kind of doctor was Dr. Cliff Huxtable on the show? You remember, Elizabeth? What kind of doctor?
OBGYN.
Yeah, exactly. That was his little sick joke he had with America and what was going on at that point. So no, I won't be buying tickets to the Bill Cosby tour, and I hope no one else does as well.
Yeah, I can't imagine that that's going to go over so well. But going back to your book, A Day in the Right, it is really thought-provoking, and it seems like this is something that, you know, it ends in 2020. So now we have 2 more years of posting. Are you planning on coming out with a second book?
That's a great question, and it's something I'm considering. I haven't decided one way or the other, or perhaps there might be another project that I'm working on, but haven't made up my mind yet about if there will be another book or another project anytime soon.
Okay. Now tell us a little bit more about the Barnes & Noble book signings. Do you have any of them scheduled for this winter?
So I've done several in the past few months. So the first part of the tour has been over. I did a few in Pennsylvania, one in New York State, one at the Jersey Shore. I am located in New Jersey, just outside the city. So as for next year, we're getting the schedule together, And my dates and my locations for signings at Barnes & Noble and perhaps some elsewhere will be posted on my social media. So I would say reach out, follow me on the George Hilway author page, and I will let everyone know well in advance where I'll be appearing.
That's wonderful. So you can get the book at Barnes & Noble as well as Amazon, which I'm showing to the screen right now. And I want to wish you great success. I have bookshop.org as well as a few other places that you can purchase the book. So we have Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart.com, abebooks.com, and bookshop.org. Thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been really interesting having a conversation with you. I love the way that you think. You're somebody that, like, I think anybody just wants to pick your brain and throw a random question and see what comes out. Like, it's a lot of fun.
And they can feel free to do that. So, just follow me on social media, like my page. I'm always happy to engage with the audience, questions and or otherwise. So I've enjoyed it a lot too, Elizabeth. I really appreciate you having me on the show and giving me this time. And so I wish you and your family very happy and healthy New Year. And thank you once more.
You're welcome. Yes. Happy New Year to you and yours. And let us know if you have another book coming out, when you have all the dates for the signing, please let us know so that people can also come to us as a resource to find out where to find you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll see you again next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. This was a lot of fun and we're just getting started. So tune in again at noon. And as always, we are blessed. You are blessed. Mwah. I love you and I will see you very soon. That was awesome. Thank you.
It was good.